Welcome to Right Talk with Mike Lee. Good evening. My guest this evening is who I call Laura Battling Pressley. She's someone that I admire very much. She's a real tiger, a real go-getter, and she's a fighter. That's really what I like about her.
Thank you.
She's been fighting the case before I got to Austin, I believe. What's the status of your case, Laura?
Well, Mike, thank you for allowing me to come and talk about this, our election integrity in Texas, and I'm just grateful for everything you do with the Republican Party here in Travis County, so thank you. I ran for City Council back in 2014 in District 4. It's the Northeast Austin, Runberg area.
That's Cassar's district, right?
It's a Greg Cassar's district, and, when we were in a runoff, and when the election results came in from Travis County on election night, they just didn't make sense. We had done, a lot of work on the campaign. We had done some polls. We knew, what our voters were thinking. And the results of him beating me 2-1 just did not make sense. And so, we kind of, the next morning got up, I licked my wounds and went in and started analyzing some data. And my background is I have a PhD in chemistry and physics, and I worked in the semiconductor industry for about 17 years. And I started analyzing some data, some voter data, and it did not make sense. Every precinct looked like it was inconsistent with the number of voters and the number of ballots that were cast. There were some statistical mathematical patterns. So we had these mathematical patterns that we had found, and they did not make sense with what we knew. And so we asked for a recount of Travis County elections. And what we found started us on this path, Mike, of Travis County could not produce the ballots that are required by state law to document and verify the results of an election. So that got us started on this path. So our case right now is in the Texas Supreme Court, and we are moving forward. The court has moved us forward a couple of times now, and being a lawyer.
Now I saw you argue at the Third Court of Appeals.
Yes, we had oral argument at the third court. We did. That
was a real instruction for me, because as a lawyer with 40 years experience, I thought I had specialized knowledge. And I did not understand that you were not a lawyer. I thought you were your lawyer. The person who was your lawyer, I thought was you.
She looks like me. She does. She's an incredible appellate lawyer. Her name is Anna Eby, and she lives in Round Rock. She practices all over Texas, and she was doing our oral argument for us. But we're about the same height.
Y'all look alike.
We look similar, and she's a great woman. She's a great lawyer. She is, yeah.
No, you're a good lawyer. That's just, because when you were arguing, I thought she kind of has a grasp of all. Like I hadn't got after 40 years. And but I like to, even though law can be complicated and confusing and all that.
That's right.
I like to make it simple. Your case is really about the fixes in, right?
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
On the street level.
Well, I'll tell you, on the street level, our case is about making sure the fix doesn't get in.
Okay.
That's really what it's about.
Okay.
That's really what it's about. And, it's, if you follow all the laws that the legislature has put in place, you can prevent a lot of election fraud. And I want to distinguish, Mike, a couple of things. Voter fraud versus election fraud. Okay. They're two separate things. One is, dead people voting, illegals voting, people duplicately voting. Okay. I'll tell you what, that's about 5 or 10% of what I would call the fraud that happens. 90% of the fraud that happens is electronic voting fraud.
Except if it's presidential voting, the Russians did it.
Well, you don't need the Russians. You don't need the Russians. You don't even need an internet connection to do electronic election fraud. You just need a memory card with a program on it that's written off-site, because that takes a little expertise, right? So you bring that memory card in, and you gotta have a touch point of the main computer, and you put that memory card in. It can come in the flow of normal memory cards, and the technician putting it in has no idea what's going on, and it can download and backwrite a program. And I think that's one thing that we have tried to raise in our case with the evidence that we got in our lawsuit with Travis, in this election contest. And, we asked Travis County for discovery, and we got audit logs, and we got access to different records. And I'll tell you one thing, it is really a scary situation that memory cards could be put in that are not recognized by the computer, and the technician just keeps moving along.
Now in your case, Laura, in legal parlance, I would say they're giving you the blues. Didn't you get hit with sanctions and all kind of things?
Oh, it's true. Our election case is heavy on statute, and it's heavy on technology of computers. And really, there's never been a case in Texas like ours, where we had the evidence and we've had, the statutes on our side, and then we've got, Travis County, who admits they don't have numbers on their ballots as required by law. They're not printing the backup records
And
as
they don't have
results
paper
tapes.
backup, do
They don't have any kind of paper backup, and so it's an interesting case. But I'll tell you one thing: we have the state constitution on our side. We have the state constitution all the way back to the 1800s say that ballots have to be numbered. And so why do ballots have to be numbered, Mike?
You can verify.
So you can verify. Even the dollar bill's numbered, right?
Right.
Yeah, even the dollar bill is numbered. So the reason the law says ballots have to be numbered is in case you do a recount and there's some extra ballots, or some are missing, or you've got duplicates, you can catch fraud. But right now across Texas for the last 17 years, we've been ignoring that constitutional requirement for these electronic voting machines. Last time I checked, computers are good at numbering stuff.
Yeah.
They're pretty good. So they can number. They should be numbered. And that's really one of the most important issues of our whole case, is that ballots ought to be numbered. When you do a recount, you should be able to verify where they came from. And Travis County can't do that.
Now you started this case yourself, didn't you?
Well, this case, we've been doing this since 2014. When we had a recount, we noticed that what was required by law was not being provided to us as a candidate. And candidates are the ones with standing, right? Candidates have standing to bring these cases in. And you have voters who they block walk, and you've got volunteers who block walk for you, and they phone bank, and they basically want candidates to stand up whenever there's an issue. And if you think your election's not, the results are not accurate, or they don't reflect the voters' will. I have been all over the state of Texas in the last 2.5 years, and I've probably given about 200 presentations to Democrat groups, Republican groups, Libertarian, Green Party, independents, retirees clubs, you just name it. Anybody that wants me to come and present on the election integrity, I will go across the state. And the grassroots want candidates to stand up because we have standing in the court.
Right.
And that's what we've been doing. So, yeah, we believe that laws are there for a reason. We believe that if you follow all the election laws in Texas, that you will prevent election corruption. And that's basically our case. And the Supreme Court has moved us forward now. And there's a lot of steps in the Supreme Court. And we're, they just making positive moves, and we keep moving forward.
And when you deal with the Supreme Court, the letters have to be so big. when you cite cases, they have to come from a paid source.
That's
You
right.
can't download them off the internet, Google and all that.
It's particular. They're picky.
There's
a reason for
it's
it. They've
tough.
got to
It's
make
tough.
sure, you've got to keep your nose clean, and you have to make sure, you know what you're talking about. And yeah, it's been a process.
Now, one of the
Yes.
things that has proved interesting to me is when I think it was Bush v. Gore, count every vote.
That's right.
It was like a
But
mantra.
count every legal vote.
Count every vote.
Count every legal vote, Mike. Okay? You can have lots of votes that aren't legal, whether they're unnumbered or whether people are casting them who should not be voting, or they're
Right.
duplicately voting. So I would have a caveat to that. Count every legal vote. And that's all our case is calling out. That right now, across the state of Texas, we don't have legal votes to count for a recount, to make sure candidates, when an elections office says somebody won, there's nothing to go verify those results. That's legal.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. Count every legal vote.
So we don't have paper backup.
There's no paper backup.
And there's another aspect of your case where the Secretary of State is excusing counties from doing certain things required by law, isn't it?
That's right. That's the second issue we've raised in our Supreme Court case. The first issue is ballots in Texas have to be numbered if you're going to count them in a recount and verify the results. That's our first issue. It's the strongest issue probably in our whole brief. The second issue we've raised is, can the Secretary of State of Texas, the Elections Division Director, who's a bureaucrat, who's not elected, appointed, can a bureaucrat in the Secretary of State's office tell counties to ignore mandatory laws with regard to backup records? Because right now there's a statute, it's 66.022 of the Texas Election Code requires that there should be election returns at the polling location when the polls close. The election judges are supposed to authenticate those results, and the county's supposed to retain them in case there's an issue. Well, we're not doing that. And the Secretary of State's office is giving counties waivers to mandatory laws to not print those records. And we have an issue with that. And so we're asking the court to provide guidance to the Secretary of State's office that they can't just waive a mandatory election law.
So basically, you're just asking that the law be enforced.
That's right. Pretty simple,
And
I
that's a
think.
revolutionary idea.
Revolutionary idea. Because, you know, there's always reasons why these laws are put in place back whenever, okay? There's a reason. And to just waive and say, well, we don't want to follow that right now, that's not a choice. We are in a republic.
Or we'd rather save trees.
Well, yeah. I'd rather have an honest and fair election. That's what I'd much rather have. So, you know, we are asking the court, you know, we respectfully disagree with the third court's assessment of our case, and we
Okay.
respectfully disagree with our trial judge. And we are asking the Supreme Court to take a look at this. And you know, Mike, it's very interesting. Not only are we're showing them the statutes that we think are not being followed, there's actually case law on the books from the Supreme Court
Of Texas.
themselves of Texas, all the way back from 2011 back to the 1800s, that support that ballots have to be numbered. Okay? There's even case law on it. So it's not just Laura Pressley making some claim that's frivolous. This claim is based on statute, it's based on case law, and is based on evidence of what happened to us. Okay? And there's even case law based on, back to the early 1900s, that returns have to be developed and authenticated at the polling location. So that's also
in plain language, kind of what
Case
is
law.
a simple, really simple way of saying, what's the hanky-panky going on in your case?
We're here to...
Because I read something about somebody inserting some card and taking some card out to some other location,
Right.
some unsecure location, something that could throw off the numbers. And I look at these bond elections they're going around here,
Yes.
and in my mind, just from what I see, there's no way in heck those margins could be what they are.
You know, I was really, you bring up a very good point. I was very surprised at the $1 billion AISD bond that was reported to have been passed. And, I have a very, very concerning questions about that. And, and so who has standing to challenge that, Mike? Who has legal standing, I think, is a really good question. One of the
Any taxpayer should, it's their money.
taxpayer, because it's happening to them. And what's very interesting about this bond election, there's no expiration date. Like a candidate's term that when I ran for city council in 2014, the term ended in 2016. Well, bond elections, there's no end date for that kind of windowing the impact that it's going to have on voters. So voters have standing, PACs, political action committees that oppose the bonds also have legal standing. And, I'm with you. I was very concerned about that $1 billion bond that supposedly passed. And actually, guys, there's no verifiable legal ballot that the county can produce that's numbered, other than the absentee ballots, which I think were less than you know, there were less than probably 500 of those. You know, the other 50,000 votes were cast on electronic voting machines, and the county is not able to produce a numbered ballot that you can track and trace to verify those results. And so that's concerning.
Well, to me, what's disappointing is that we're in a so-called Republican state, so-called conservative state, and if any state follows the law, in my mind, it should be this one.
I'm with you.
But that's not.
I'm with you.
But from what I gather from your case, that's not what's happening.
Well, we're getting the Secretary of State.
We have a Secretary of State that's appointed by a Republican governor who's not telling counties to do things that the law requires.
Well, we have to go a couple of steps, kind
Back.
of the people that report to the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State has an elections director, an elections office, and that group of people are the ones that are not holding to the letter of the law. That in our case, we're asking the Supreme Court to provide guidance to them on interpreting the law and interpreting that they may not waive it.
So we got a deep state in our state.
Well, we don't have the rule of law right now. We just don't. We don't have it in Texas with regard to elections. And, you know, fraud can waltz across the state when you're not holding to the letter of the law for the most important things we have in a representative form of government. We've got a representative form of government in this country, and our elections are the most important thing we have. And because it defines
The vote,
everything.
the vote's
The
supposed
vote
to
is
be.
it, guys. We have veterans who have, you know, spent, you know, and sacrificed for this country so that we can have honest and fair elections, and we're not holding them to the letter of the law. I think that's an absolute must that we have to do. At minimum, we have to hold our elected representatives and our elections office and our Secretary of State's office and our counties and our county commissioners and our city council members, all of them, accountable to the rule of law for elections.
So are there any timing considerations with your case in Texas Supreme Court?
Well, you know,
Is it set for argument, anything like that?
it's very interesting, and you know this because you're a lawyer, and not everybody, you know, and I didn't know this until I got into this, into filing these briefs. But the next stage that we're in with the Supreme Court, and there's a lot of stages, is about a 6 to 8 month window where 3 briefs are going to be written. We will write 2 of them. Our opponent, Greg Kassar's legal team, will write one, and then the court will evaluate that. And we're also going to ask for oral argument, and because we want the grassroots to be able to come and watch this and experience, you know, kind of what happens in the Texas Supreme Court. So, you know, and it's very interesting. The grassroots, you know, I've been all over the state trying to raise money for our lawsuit. Our lawsuit right now is about $300,000 to hold, you know, the Secretary of State's office in Travis County accountable to the rule of law. It's been about $300,000. And we've raised that all around the state. And the grassroots has kind of carried this water the whole time over the last 2.5 years. And now we've got something that, you know, is really positive that's happened. The Attorney General, Ken Paxton's office.
The AG has intervened.
I don't know if they've intervened, but
Intervened,
they've written an amicus.
Or they step forth to defend what hasn't been happening?
Yeah, the Attorney General's job is to defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Texas. And so we've raised a constitutional issue. They looked at this issue, and they chose to write an amicus brief supporting our petition, in support of the petitioner, which is me, and, you know, to ask the court to hear the case, because they're concerned. They're part of the group, the team that certifies this election voting equipment, electronic voting equipment, and their concern is this legal? Because we are required by law to number ballots.
Because things have been happening that they're supposed, actually, they should oversee it, actually.
Well, they're part of who oversees it. The secretary. It's very interesting in the election code. It defines which groups do what. So the Secretary of State's office appoints 4 people to this certification committee that decides this equipment is going to be certified or not, and the AG's office appoints 2 people plus the 4 from the Secretary of State's office. So the AG's like, hey, we're part of this team. We're very concerned. We think this system, you know, it may not be meeting the Constitution. So Supreme Court, please give guidance. We want this case heard. So we're very happy about that. We're very grateful that the Attorney General's office has stepped in. It feels like the cavalry has kind of shown up. The grassroots have been carrying this water.
Reinforcements have arrived.
Yeah, the reinforcements have arrived, and then the Supreme Court has chosen to move it forward to full briefing, which is also positive. That gives us a lot of encouragement, and so we're grateful. We're so grateful. We've had donations, we've had the grassroots support, and we've got the Paxton's office and the Supreme Court. The members of the court have chosen. They want to hear this, and they want to move it forward to full briefing. So we're very grateful.
I had a question. At one point in my career, I worked at Judicial Watch in Washington, D.C.
I know, that's awesome.
Have you
They're
heard?
very famous.
Have you heard from Tom then?
I have talked to Tom. I have, and this is a state issue right now because it was a city council race and it's state law. What's very interesting and something he told me, he's watching this.
But I know
case.
Tom's kind of nosy.
He is. He's a good man. He's nosy.
Tom started at Judicial Watch. We started at Judicial Watch probably weeks apart.
Wow. Well, they're watching this case, and I'll tell you what's very interesting is Texas is one of the few states in the nation that demands and requires that ballots be numbered. Not all the states do that, and so he's watching this case because we believe that there are some other implications this case may have outside of Texas, because really ballot numbering is the holy grail of election integrity. We worry about dead people voting, illegals voting, people voting multiple times, but the ballot has to be numbered to make sure that the vote is right, that you count legal ballots.
One of the things, Laura, that I have kind of prayed about and meditated about is I've always had this foreboding feeling that Travis County was going to be the center of the political universe. I'm not quite sure why I thought that. I thought this a couple of years ago.
Really?
It just occurred to me.
Really?
Because
You're very intuitive.
as they said, someone said at one of EC meetings, Travis County is like in the belly of the beast.
Yes.
And so,
well, it's one of the 5 largest counties in Texas. It is. We're not a small county. We've got, we're large. We have I think there's 700,000 maybe registered voters. We're a big force in the state. We are.
Behind Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, it's us, I believe.
I think so. You've got Houston,
Dallas,
Dallas,
Houston,
Fort Worth,
Houston,
San Antonio, and I think Austin.
Okay.
Yeah, and then El Paso's in there also, and El Paso's in one of the largest. I think.
So you expect, because of deadlines and scheduling and whatnot, you expect your case to drag on for another year and a half or 2 or 4?
That's a great question, and you're reading tea leaves on that one because I don't know for sure, but I think I know what's going to happen over the next 8 months is going to be these 3 briefs that are going to be written. They're going to be evaluating them, and it may take another 6 months for them to evaluate it, and we'll go from there. So I think a year to a year and a half is very reasonable. Yeah.
I know one of the first cases that I worked on as a lawyer was it was an appeal case down in Beaumont involving Pleasure Island and Port Arthur. And I had to read about 15,000 pages of transcript in order to write the brief.
Wow.
So I kind of know what kind of nightmare that is.
It's very stressful.
Transcripts coming in boxes.
Yeah, it is. I tell you one thing, going through this process, I have gained so much respect for lawyers and what they do, and the stress that you deal with, the timelines, and you have people's lives on your shoulders. You have the rule of law on your shoulders. It gives me chills to just step in those shoes for just an inch. You guys are miles, and I've just been in there for about an inch of effort, and but I'm very sincere about this. What lawyers do is very complex, and what's very interesting on our case, We had a Republican lawyer on our election contest, David Rogers, who is a really excellent lawyer. And, you know, he was a former Republican Party precinct chair in Travis County. So you know, everybody knows his political leanings as Republican. And then we had a lawyer, Mark Cohen, who, you know, there's no question about his political leanings, and he's donated to Democrat campaigns all across the city and all across the county. And so we had a mix of Republican and Democrat lawyers on our case. Our case is not a partisan case. Election integrity, Mike,
Right.
Everybody supports election integrity. Everybody, except those committing the corruption. Okay?
Right,
Okay. So we take
Except
the cake.
except the fixers.
Except the fixers, okay, whoever they are. And that's not my, you know, I'm outside of that sandbox. I'm not getting in that sandbox. But, you know, I'm staying in my sandbox. But you know, election integrity is not partisan. And I've been an activist on a lot of issues, Mike, over my career. I'm 55 years old, and I've been involved in a lot of issues.
I got you beat by 10.
Well, you don't look it.
Thank you.
Well, I've worked on a lot of activism, a lot of issues, but election integrity has got to be one of the easiest because everyone agrees. We all just want to block walk and phone bank and donate to our candidates, and we know they're going to win. Let the chips fall, right?
Well, it's important to try
This
to
is
get.
such an
it's
important
to try
issue.
to get
Everybody
things
agrees
right.
on it. Get it right.
That's why I had the
That's
name
right.
of this show,
and,
Right
and,
Talk.
and we have a candidate that wins, and we don't like him. We can vote him out, right?
There'll be another election.
It's another election. But if the vote is not honest and you can't verify it, like I said, fraud can waltz across Texas. So we have to be under the rule of law. We're a republic. We want the rule of law to be held to one county equal to another. If Collin County
Right.
has to hold to certain laws, so does Travis. If Harris County has to hold to certain laws,
All 254.
So does
all
Travis.
254. Not,
We're all
not the
equal.
19 that started it.
that's right, we're all equal. And Gillespie County, which has all paper ballots and they're all numbered and they follow their laws, they have to follow the law just like Travis. And Travis and vice versa. And that's all we're asking in our case. That's all we're asking, that the law should be equal across everybody. No one's immune to the law. Yes.
That was supposed to be the idea.
No, that is the
But
idea. That is the idea.
but that's
Yeah.
unfortunately that's not the practice.
It's not the practice, and you're right. That is unfortunate, and it takes human beings like us to hold elected representatives accountable. Okay, it's on our shoulders, and you know I do a lot of prayer, and you know my prayer is
Well,
that
you have to when you're out there on the battlefield.
you need all the soldiers you can get.
Guns are not enough.
You need all the soldiers you can get, and you know, and this is my prayer, Mike. You know, I have several of them, and one is, you know, I pray that you know the dear Lord just keep opening the doors, and we'll keep walking through them.
Well,
You know, we just keep walking. And the other one is honest and fair elections are happening across Texas, and we're going to allow more to happen with this pressing of following of the laws. Every county are equal, and they have to follow the same laws. And so we know honest elections happen. We are allowing more to happen. Right? That's so simple. These are very simple things.
Now, I have heard, and I'm sure you've heard too, that you're just fighting this because of sour grapes.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Well,
Oh,
they
you've
want you to
probably
go
heard that many
away.
times, huh?
They
What?
want you to go away, right? And you know what I say to that? I just say, ego, get in the back seat. We got work to do. We got work to do. And that doesn't affect me. It rolls off my back because I know that what we're asking for is just the basics of a constitutional republic. Follow the laws equally across. That's all we're asking. And, you know, all those negative comments, you know, just I don't hear them. They go, and I say, we got to keep moving. We keep moving, keep opening the doors. We're going to keep walking through them.
So you're able to raise money from donations and whatnot?
Yes, we are. We've got, you know, donations. You know, we do finance reports. This is required by the Texas Ethics Commission that these election contests be documented, and the donors are all documented. And so our donors range from $5 up to $10,000, and everywhere in between. And we've raised, you know, I'm just estimating right now, I haven't done a full accounting of this last period, but probably 260 to 270,000 we've raised across the state. And when I started this process, I didn't know if the money was going to be there, but I had faith that it would. I had faith. I said, this is an important issue, and you know, I'm an engineer, and I know what specs are. You know, you follow specs to make a computer chip. Well, the election code is just a spec for the counties to follow. So
Let me ask this
that's what
question.
logically made sense to me, and I knew the money was going to be there. I didn't know how.
Now I had, I guess for my viewers' pleasure, I guess, I had you and I have gone over your lawsuit and your
Yes.
situation. And what really jumped out at me was you told me about some card that somebody walks off with, or sticks in, or something
Right.
that can do some bad things,
Right.
some
so,
wrong things.
Yeah, the evidence that we got was very compelling, Mike. You know, in a lawsuit, and you know this being a lawyer, that you get discovery,
Right.
right? And so we requested in the state law. It said it's in the administrative code. It requires that audit logs of the main computer, where all the tabulation happens, audit logs, time, date, stamps of everything that happens at that main computer is to be documented. Okay, so we knew that. And in our discovery, we requested that. And so the county gave it to us. And what we found on those audit logs was shocking. It was the first time any candidate in the country, in the United States of America, that had ever gotten an audit log of an electronic voting system. We were the first time, because it takes money to file these lawsuits, right? It's expensive. So in the audit log, it showed corruption errors. And we had the manual that said, what does a corruption error mean? And it means that you're supposed to quarantine that card. You're not supposed to put it in the computer, because a corruption error is somewhat saying, I don't recognize you, memory card. You know, memory cards go in computers and you download something, right? Just like think of a memory stick. Well,
Right.
memory sticks are the little memory sticks we have now. That's something recent over the last 5 years. This equipment was developed and rolled out in 2001. So think back 17 years ago, we had memory cards
Right.
that were about the size of a business card,
Right.
And so those store data. And so what we found on those audit logs, Mike, was shocking, that corruption errors left and right 9 times on election night were happening. And there was a certain memory card that was corrupt. And we got the audit log of that card. And that card, we don't know where that card had been for probably 19 days. It looked like it was logged in and then 10 days later logged out. We don't know if that card was in the computer the whole time, if it had been taken off site.
So some
We don't
person
know.
could have had possession of it, is that correct?
They could have. We didn't know for sure.
Right.
And so we asked the judge in our case, can we get to that memory card that's got this corruption error on it? And we want to
How hard was it to get to that card?
Oh, the judge wouldn't let us have it. So, you know, that
In
was
discovery?
In discovery, wouldn't let us have it. And so that was very problematic, because that memory card, we think, had a program on it that could have rewritten the results. And because you don't have a numbered ballot and you don't have the tapes printed, there's nothing to document.
And you never got that card?
We never got that card. The judge, they put forth a discovery control plan and said, we're not giving you that proprietary software.
So what they do, file for protective order and all that? Say trade secret or something?
That's right, a proprietary, and they refused to give us that. The judge allowed not that, and so that was a problem in our case. We wanted that card. We had a computer expert ready to analyze it for what the corruption error meant and why it was corrupted, and so we never got to that last
Right.
bit of proof.
Right.
But in an election contest, you kind of need that to prove your case.
Well,
You really do.
discovering information is a step and process of ascertaining what the heck happened and what is true.
Yeah, and can you discern what
And
the
if- and
election?
if,
Yes.
And I have
Can the results be ascertained? That's what the state law says. In an election contest, the judge is to determine whether the results can be ascertained or not. And that was our position. The results can't be ascertained because there's no legal ballots to count. there's no tapes, and the audit log shows that the computer was corrupted.
And so since the judge did not order its disclosure, that stinks.
It's unfortunate. It's very,
No.
It's unfortunate for Travis County voters, okay? And the voters in my election is very unfortunate. And again, we respectfully disagree with the trial judge for ruling that we didn't have, he ruled that we had no evidence in our case at all. And we really don't agree
Well, you
with
had
that.
no evidence because he wouldn't let you get it.
Well, there was that issue. We raised that issue. We did.
Judge said, you have no evidence. I have it in my pocket.
Well, we couldn't get to the. We had evidence, and did we have evidence of what the program and who wrote the program? No, we were trying to get that, and then we were shut down, and the judge threw us out of court for a no evidence summary judgment, and then sanctioned us $100,000 for a frivolous lawsuit, and the Third Court of Appeals upheld that, and again, we respectfully disagree with both of those courts, the Third Court and the trial judge.
So is the Supreme Court dealing with all those issues, or are they?
They are.
What are they
Well,
reviewing?
we've narrowed it because as you go to the Texas Supreme Court, you don't just rehash everything over.
It's not a shotgun.
It's not a shotgun. So
You gotta-
it's very narrowed and very
it's
focused.
surgery.
You got it. And so we really had a lot of decisions to make on how
How to tactically approach
how to
it.
tactically approach it and strategically approach it. So we focused on 3 issues. One was the ballot numbering, which is the constitutional issue, which is very powerful, and that's a statewide issue. Number 2 is the tapes. Should the Secretary of State's office, the Elections Division, can they waive mandatory law?
Right.
That's the second one. And the third one, is this a frivolous case? And should the Supreme Court reverse those sanctions? We think so. We think we got evidence. And also, because there's case law that has been brought in the past on the same issues we've raised, this case is not frivolous.
Oh no.
It's not frivolous. And so we feel really strongly right now that we're going to get that part overturned pretty easily. We don't know for sure, but I feel we're going to prevail on that. And we're going to prevail on the constitutional issue, and we're going to prevail that the Secretary of State cannot waive mandatory law.
Well, they need to get those sanctions off you.
And we get this. That would be nice.
I mean, that's
because
to
we're
me- to
appealing
me,
that
that's the
too.
main thing.
We're appealing that. We have not been asked to pay that yet because it's in the appeal process, and we're just. Yeah, I feel strongly we are going to prevail. That justice and truth are going to prevail across the state of Texas for the most important thing we have in this political environment, which are our elections.
Well,
I believe it.
when this country was established, it was established on the constitutional basis, and your stake was your property,
Yes.
and now your stake is your vote.
Oh yes.
And if your
Very
stake
important.
if your stake is your vote, then that should be what it's all about.
That's right. And I want to say one thing about this electronic voting stuff. I get called in across the state on issues. We've as I go around discussing these concerns and these laws that aren't being followed, counties will call me when they have issues. Okay, certain voters and groups will call me. And so I was called down to Hays County, which is San Marcos, is very close.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember this, but in the November election, Hays County lost a memory card. They lost it. They didn't know where they put it. They had an equipment issue. They didn't know where the votes didn't get counted. It was a memory card with 1,800 votes on it, 1,800 ballots. All right, and so. And how did this come about? How did they find this memory? They eventually found the memory card. Well, there was an election contest, and the county had to come up with a card. Something's missing. Where are the votes, right? So the elections office found the memory card, and to their credit, admitted, hey, these 1,800 ballots did not get counted. Well, what happened after that was an issue. The elections office, it said that we don't know who those 1,800 people are. Well, that's not exactly accurate, because when you
But
go
they
to
could.
vote,
But
don't
they
you sign
could.
in?
Yeah.
You sign in, right? So they know who you are, and we scan it, and your voter ID, and we know who voted and all this. So we knew who the 1,800 people were. And so there was a meeting in Hays County that I got called down to help with. And voters came, and there was a long list of these 1,800 people who votes were not counted. And on that list was the county judge, the Hayes County judge, okay, and one of the county commissioners. Both of them, their votes were not counted. All right? And then we had all these people come and look for their name. Mike, it was so emotional. They were crying. They were shocked. You should see their visual of their face. It was just, they were in shock. They were taking pictures of their mother's name and texting it to them and say, your vote didn't count either. Or their aunt, or their brother, or their daughter. They could go find their name. It was put in alphabetical order, the votes who were not counted. And I'll tell you one thing, that reminded me of just how important our vote is. When you find out your vote didn't count, you went down, you voted for your candidate, and it didn't get counted, there's a problem. This is an issue that is not partisan. We want our vote counted as we cast it. And laws are there in place. God bless the legislature in Texas. We've put laws in place
To make that happen.
to make it happen, and we're not following them. This ain't going to happen. We want to stop to this. We want the rule of law to prevail. But Hayes County was was really a case study because the people were so upset and angry. They were crying. They were texting, and it was very emotional.
Well, is that?
And Hayes County now is calling for a paper backup because I tell you, it's harder. It's harder to lose
Paper.
a ballot box of 1,800 ballots than it is a memory card you can put in your pocket and forget where
Right.
you put it. Yeah, it's amazing. And, one of the good things that's happened with all of this, it's kind of woken us up. The sleeping giant is now awake, the voters of Texas. And we want all our election laws, not just the most important ones, like the ballot numbering, the constitutional requirement. We want all the laws followed to the T. No more of this, it just takes too long to do something. We want everything followed to the T. That's what we expect.
Well, that is what is right, and that is what should happen.
That's what should happen. And that's
But
what we
that-
think is happening in the background. When I was a candidate, I was worried about block walking and phone banking. I wasn't worried
Right.
about who was counting electronic voting. Were they printing the tape or was the ballots numbered? I didn't know anything about that.
You think if you get your people out and they vote, it's going to count.
That's right, because everybody's following the law in the background. Well, that's not the case. And it's up to us to stand up. And we have been asleep. I was asleep, and I'm not asleep anymore.
Well, what's frightening is, despite the reality of what's happening, you as a candidate or people that's working together politically, they can try to get something done, but because the law isn't being followed, they can't get done what they're trying to get done.
I know it. It's very frustrating. I know.
The will of the people can be frustrating.
I know it. And there are a lot of issues right now in Travis County with them not following certain laws, from my perspective. And I have to say one good thing about Travis County. In the next 2 years, we're going to be looking at new voting equipment. And Dana DeBevois, who's the county clerk, has made commitments to the Travis County voters that the future systems will have a paper backup.
Really?
Yes, she has made that commitment. It's in the press. You could see it. The Statesman's reported on it.
Well, hopefully insurance is paid up.
And we're going to hold her to that promise, because I believe she wants to do the right thing. I really believe that, and we're going to have her back on this. We want, as Travis County, voters, we want a paper backup to verify our vote. We want that.
Is that required by Texas law?
It's not required by Texas law, but the Texas law has made it possible to have a paper backup. Yeah.
So it's optional.
It's optional, and counties can pick what they want. And county by county, they get to their commissioner's court, and they have an elections commission. Every county has an elections commission, and they pretty much make recommendations to the county commissioners. And that election commission has the Republican Party chair, the Democrat Party chair, I think the county clerk, the county treasurer, and the county judge. So I may be off on a couple people, but I think this is the case.
Well, it brings back
That commission-
nightmares.
that
It
com-
brings back nightmares for me personally because early in my career I worked in Jefferson County in a DA's office, and I was a legal counsel to the appointed elected officials.
Yes.
So I have nightmares in my head,
You do,
in my
you do.
head about some things.
Yeah. So this county commission, this county elections commission, makes recommendations to the county commissioners
Right.
who vote on the system, and all of those people are elected,
Right.
and we have a say in the system that we want going forward. That is, that the results, you can validate them, that
So-
they're verifiably real.
So Hayes County has already said we're going to do paper.
They've not said we're going to do
haven't
paper.
said
The
it.
voters have been calling for a paper backup, and the county commissioners court is has looked at a couple of systems, and they've had a citizens commission.
That's for paper backup?
Pardon?
They're asking for paper backup?
The voters are asking for a paper backup, and some of the members of the citizens commission have been asking for a paper backup, and
Because of the 1800 snafu?
yeah, that was a wake up call. That was a wake up call, and that's the first time in Texas that's happened, and but you kind of see the consequences of this stuff. You see, we love computers, we love them, Mike, but we
Sometimes-
know they're vulnerable.
Sometimes if you stay at it, you get a break every now and then.
Sometimes you get a break.
But only because you kept at it.
You stay at it, yeah. And you know, the Attorney General just came out with an opinion recently on these. There's a couple of voting systems on deck right now. Hart Intercivic and ESNS, who are vendors, they now have a paper system that has an electronic component that adds up the votes quickly, but they have a paper ballot to go back to for a recount. And so that system, those two systems have been recently certified in the last year and a half. And counties now can look at those systems and make a choice whether that's something they want. And so we encourage counties to look at that and people to speak up.
Well, with that kind of development going on and your case going on, there's a chance that something good could happen.
I think so. We want our ballots to be numbered. And paper ballots are numbered. Absentee ballots, any of your people watching, if they vote on an absentee ballot, it's numbered. And I'll tell you what, that absentee ballot and that electronic ballot better legally be equivalent if you're going to count them in a recount.
But I think the vote is so important, and its tabulation is so important that I'm praying and probably I'm sort of confident that the Supreme Court will try to get it right. They'll try to get it right.
I believe that the justice and the rule of law will prevail in Texas. I believe that. I do. I feel it. I do. Yeah, I wouldn't have. You know, we should have that expectation. We should. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well-
I'm grateful for you for getting the word out to people. And
Oh.
this is a complex topic. It's a complex topic from a legal standpoint, statute standpoint, and it's a complex topic from a computer technology standpoint. And I believe now we've merged the two so well in this
And
case.
it's a very complex topic
gonna
from
go.
the standpoint of trying to sleep at night.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I know.
I know it.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
This has been a labor of love, I'll have to say that.
Well, you
It has
gotta
been.
love it, and either that or be insane. I can personally testify to that. that practicing law is probably qualifies as a form of insanity.
Well, I respect lawyers
it's
way
not-
more than, you know, I seeing your world.
I tell my
it's
producing
very
wife all the
complex.
time, lawyers are not sane people. That's why I have a wife,
Oh,
to try to
balance you.
No, because you ride back. You know, there's a thin line between sanity and insanity, and lawyers ride back and forth across the border. So you got to have somebody that can pull you back on the right side of the border, or something, on the sane side,
Yeah.
because it's interesting, it's trying on the brain a little bit.
It is trying. It's
And with
very
me,
trying.
you know, little brain I got, it's just a whole hell of a strain.
No, if you're a lawyer, you have a big brain. I believe. I believe that. You know, I'm grateful for the lawyers that worked on our case. We have another lawyer, Anna Eby, who's handling this Supreme Court component. She handled the oral argument at the third court. She's fabulous. She's a very trusted, a very talented appeals court lawyer.
Well, appellate practice is like it's a specialized practice in itself.
It is, yes, sir, it is.
Most of the lawyers who do it effectively, they were Supreme Court clerks and things like that.
I know.
It's kind of like a frat.
Is it? Is a revolving door?
and it's the same thing at the U.S. Supreme Court.
I know.
The lawyers who go-
The expertise is so advanced. It really is. And we've had Anna Eby, this lawyer, help us with the briefs. Going forward, we're going to have her help a little more because we're in the big time here. And
14-inch font.
14 Times New Roman. That's what we use.
That's
so.
right. Don't come in there.
Yeah.
Don't come in there with something else that
With bookmarks and all of it.
kick it back
yes,
out.
I know.
Right.
I have a newfound respect for what goes on, and yeah.
Well, I guess that's why I'm kind of hard on judges myself, because to me, judges are the ultimate gatekeepers.
They are.
And if there's a problem in the system, I think it's the judges. Y'all can get mad at me, I don't care. But it's the judges. If you do what's right and what the law requires, most times things can fall in line.
Yeah.
But when you get judges with their own ideas of what things should be or how things should come out, that's why people ask for juries.
It's true.
To get away from you.
Well, I respect that.
And they're human.
Yeah, we're all human, and I think redemption of everybody is a possibility. When we don't do the right thing, and so I'm grateful to be here. I think this is it's a perfect storm, and candidates have standing, and and I tell candidates this. They ask me should they challenge their elections, and I tell them, if you know that you won your election, if you know it, you have to stand up for your voters and your donors and your volunteers. You owe it to them. And that's how I feel about this, about our case. I feel so strongly that the results that came out were not the accurate results. And I owe it to my voters and my donors and my the people who block walked and phone banked, because I have standing. And I tell other candidates the same thing. You have standing, so you have to really go back and evaluate yourself. Because this has been a long road, Mike. And
Yeah, I know.
to go through this, I have to know in my heart that I don't believe those results.
Because you had plenty of chances to quit. And even let's say if and when you win, that seat is going. That election's over. Cassara's been in the seat.
That election is over, and that's what you bring up you bring up an interesting legal point that, and we've argued this in our petition.
Because they said I'm sure some judges asked, "What's the remedy?"
Yeah, so there's 3 remedies we're asking for, and because I'll run again at some point, and if this is not addressed, it's going to happen again.
Right.
And because the justice system does not move, at a lickety-split pace, it does the best it can. It really does. It does the best it can. But that is one of the issues. The legal system moves slowly. And so we've said, this case is ripe because I'll run again, and the same thing's going to happen to me again. Okay, and the same thing's going to happen to any candidate across Texas, any candidate across Travis County. So it has to be addressed. And so we've asked for 3 things. We've asked for the court to provide the guidance to the Secretary of State that the numbers have to be on the ballots, even electronic, and to the Secretary of State's Elections Division cannot waive mandatory law, and we've asked them to please remove the sanctions.
Laura,
that's all we're asking for.
I want to thank you for being on my show. I'm going to have to wind up. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
I'll probably have you back again because it's a knucklehead topic. And I'd like to try to make it simple for people.
And you do a great job.
So we may have to do it again. Well, I try.
You do. You're wonderful.
But, in my show, I always say on my shows, right talk leads to right thinking, leads to right action. And in the end, we want to do the right thing.
That's right.
That's what it's about. Now, I also say what's good for the black community is good for the community. I always
we're all
like to add
equal.
that because it's true.
We're equal. We should be equal
We
in
all
the eyes
believe
of the
red
law.
blood, and that's okay.
That's right.
For it to be said, except if Trump says it, it's bad. It's racist if Trump says it.
Wow. We want justice and the truth. That's what we want.
I just want what's right. Thank you, Laura.
God bless
Thank you
you.
very much.
God bless you, my friend.
God bless you. Thank you.